can you play quarterback in the NFL with a dislocated thumb?
On your throwing hand, probably not.
Okay.
I was one guy that didn't suffer a lot of major injuries in my career, but I suffered a lot of hand and finger injuries. And, it's just one of those things that it's really tough to grip a football. You can't grip a football. You can't direct the football the way that you want. Now, I will say this, that when I played in the Super Bowl with the Cardinals in 2008, I wore the gloves at that point in time. Later in my career, I went to the gloves and I actually had a broken index finger during our run to the Super Bowl. And I remember one time taking the glove off and going, let me just see if I could, throw and control the football if I wasn't wearing the gloves. And I couldn't put the gloves back on, and I had enough, tack on the ball or whatever it was to be able to play and throw. So I know there's guys that have done different things if you can find the right elements to allow you to have the strength and control of the football. But, when you're suffering injuries to your right hand, there's always going to be limitations with swelling and strength. And it's just something that's really hard to do.
How long would you guess it would take him?
Man, that's a tough one. So when we're talking about dislocation, we're talking about ligaments. Because sometimes ligaments are even harder than bones because they're so easy to kind of tweak. I'll go back to another Super Bowl. I played a Super Bowl in 2001 where I had ligament damage to my thumb, and so played with it. But I remember the number of times that you're just doing kind of mundane stuff like, washing the dishes or walking, just by a counter and you bump those ligaments and, it just sets you back. And that's kind of the hardest thing is when is it strong enough? When are they healthy to play? And then, if you do play or if you're getting back to practice or whatever it is, it's so easy to re-injure those things. So you never get back to where you want to be. And again, back to my first comment, it's all about controlling the football. It's all about having the strength to be able to put the football where you want to put it. And anything that limits that makes it really hard to play quarterback, especially at this level.
For the record, I will not be referencing any of the Super Bowls that I played in.
What a badass thing to be able to do, though.
To go from one to another.
We asked him two questions. He's like, well, I have an anecdote from each Super Bowl for your first two questions. All right, we get it. You won MVP. It's very impressive.
Hall of Famer.
We understand.
Kurt, we feel like we're about to relive a quarterback news cycle and conversational cycle that we do every few years. Why do we always end up doing this? Like the quarterback from the small school who gets the ball out fast against the quarterback who's still trying to prove it with his superior, tools, but he hasn't quite got it. Like we're going to do this again now that we have a Tyson Bagent and a Justin Fields. Do other teams do this too, or is it just Chicago's lot in life to relive this again and again and again?
Well, I think it happens here and there. Unfortunately, you guys have, suffered through a lot of these situations of just trying to find that guy, trying to find that guy that you can just, get behind center for 10, 12 years and you don't have to concern yourself about, other guys along the way and, finding somebody better. So, unfortunately, that's the nature of this business is you guys aren't the only ones. I remember when Miami, Dan Marino retires from Miami and how long it took them to find their guy. Cleveland's another organization that just, and if you don't have one of those guys, it's really hard to win week in and week out. And then obviously really hard to make a run and be successful. So it's the nature of what every organization is trying to do is find that guy. There's just not that many of them. And so you hope that when you get the draft picks high, you hit on them. And unfortunately, Chicago, hasn't had that as of yet. Not that Justin can't be that guy, but haven't had that guy that they put in there, and and he kind of just runs away with it.
Tyson Bagent, to the best of our knowledge, never bagged groceries, but he was undrafted, and he did play at D2 Shepherd College. Did you see anything from Tyson Bagent, maybe at the Senior Bowl or in relief of Justin Fields yesterday? Anything positive or negative, Kurt?
Well, obviously in the preseason he played really well. But I think something that we've already realized this year with a couple guys like DTR in Cleveland, who had a great preseason, that regular season is not the preseason. When teams are preparing and they understand what you like to do and they can attack your weaknesses, it's not the same thing. And so Tyson, just watching him in the game, he struggled a little bit, struggled to kind of see it, to get it out on time in this game. And now, I'll say this, amazingly enough, the Bears, put together two solid performances the last 2 weeks on offense, and Justin playing pretty good. This was almost the 100% opposite of that. Like, I thought offensively, they were kind of a mess in this game all over the board, not just pointing at the quarterbacks, their blocking schemes, leaving defensive tackles free. I mean, it was bad across the board. They really didn't do anything well. And so hard to really point at the quarterbacks and say they were, the bad part of this game. I thought the whole offense struggled. But, I thought Tyson, struggled to really see it or at least be confident in seeing it and getting it out of his hands, in relief in this game. And again, it's always tough, right? When you don't have any practice and you're not expecting to play, and then you get thrown in and maybe you're running plays that were designed for the other quarterback or things that he does well. So, Justin doesn't play. This gives you a better indication after a week of practice and a week of building your system or your game plan around a quarterback to know, what he can be, as opposed to just coming in, for a couple quarters in relief.
Bears had 10 days to get ready for Brian Flores, who notoriously blitzes a lot. Yesterday, they blitzed 72% of the time. Very first play, there's a free edge rusher, and Justin is hammered from the blind side. Were they under coordinated, poorly game planned? Felt like it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you might say that, or there was just some confusion with the guys up front. It spoke to, just as I mentioned before, there was a couple times where the same kind of look, where Flores brings, everybody up to the line of scrimmage, and sometimes they pop out, sometimes they bring everybody. First play you're referencing, they brought everybody. It was like a blitz zero. So that guy was an unblocked guy. So that one really is on Justin Fields more than anything. He's got to know who he's hot off of. He's got to get the ball out of his hands. He didn't. But there were other instances where you saw the back, crossing over to block a defensive end, and the tackle also went to the defensive end. So you got a defensive tackle running free at your quarterback. And so, I have to believe that they talked about that, and they should have had, a number of those situations blocked. Yet there was confusion up front more than it was probably they didn't have the answers. Because I know there's no scheme that says, hey, we're going to leave the defensive tackle free instead of a defensive end or the furthest guy from the quarterback. So, so I think there was some issues across the board. I thought that they could have had better answers against that, that blitz zero that we talk about, that all-out blitz that Flores does. I've seen a couple other teams really answer it well this year. And just, again, I didn't think Chicago played well across the board. As we just mentioned, blocking scheme, Justin Fields on one, and then you could put some on Getty with the scheme.
Talking to Kurt Warner, the color analyst for Monday Night Football. He was in London for Ravens and Titans. What is the effect on a quarterback when you have no idea if the snap and shotgun is actually going to hit you in the hands? The Bears had at least half a dozen bad snaps yesterday.
Well, it's never fun, right? It's always hard enough when, one reason I always like to be under center is because you get the ball in your hands and you can keep your eyes down the field. That's always taken a little bit out of the equation when you're in shotgun, because you have to take your eyes off of, the rotation of the defense or the pressure of the defense to at least catch the football. Then you add another element where the ball is not where you want it to be, so you can't just catch it and get your eyes back to the defense. It throws everything off. It messes everything up. Your footwork's off. Where your eyes want to be, right? If I want to look to the right-hand side and all of a sudden the ball comes off to my left, it's hard to get my eyes back there and see what I need to see. So it's all the elements of playing football, right? All the nuances of playing football. And that's one of the nuances when you live more in the shotgun that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Is a bad snap throws off timing. It throws off the rhythm of your quarterback. It messes with his eyes to make him a little bit slower in seeing what he wants to see, or even can create misses because he can't instead of being able to turn and see that safety right now, he can't find that safety because the safety is not in the same place he was when the ball was initially snapped. So, those little things, are the things that frustrate you because they do make a huge difference.
Is there an advantage on some level for these coaches to get a look at Tyson Bagent if they believe in him now that the injury to Justin Fields appears to be here? Organizationally, is it a good thing to get a look?
I think it always is, because you never know who a player is until they actually get, in between the lines on a Sunday afternoon and play. So, again, I'll go back to an anecdote. When I took over with the Rams, nobody really knew if I was any good or not. All I had ever really played was in preseason and a mop-up duty against the 49ers the year before. And so, the coaches could have acted confident because of what they saw in practice. Everybody else out there thought, this guy's not going to be any good because he played arena football, but nobody really knew what I was capable of. And that's the case with a lot of these guys, is that might look good in preseason, get a little bit of time there, but you never know until you have to prepare. You have to game plan. You're going to see things like, like a Brian Flores is going to throw at you these blitz zero looks, and then they're popping out, and you got to identify that, and you got to know where you go with the football. That stuff is hard. It's why it's the hardest position in all of sports to play. So I always think it's, and you never win at the expense of an injury, obviously, but I think it's always good to know what you have in that room, and do you have confidence in a guy like Tyson, whether that's to be a starter if you need him to be a starter, or even to be a quality backup, because you guys know as well as I do. I mean, there's been a lot of quarterbacks already that have been banged up, and we've had to see backup quarterbacks already through week 6 in the NFL. It is hard for quarterbacks to go through an entire season without getting banged up. And it's important because you only have 17 of these games, that every game is important. You need a guy that can come in and give you some wins and play competitive football. So, backup quarterbacks are just as valuable, maybe not just as valuable, but backup quarterbacks are really valuable at this level as well.
Did they give you the Monday nighter off tonight after being in London yesterday? One would hope.
I'm actually still in London, fellas. So I'm actually coming back tomorrow morning. So, yes, not calling the game tonight. I will be back in the booth next week after, I get that clock going again when I get back to Daisy.
Danny, you got to give me your museum recommendation.
Oh, did you go to the Churchill War Rooms? It's a great museum.
I didn't go this time, but I have gone before. We called a couple games here in the past, and it is awesome. A great experience, no doubt.
These guys made fun of me because the Cubs were in London, and I was recommending to all of our Cubs people, like, you got to go to the Churchill Bunkers. It's
everybody,
the best museum I've ever been to.
Players, coaches, broadcasters, everybody.
And then they went to Westminster. I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, great.
Yeah, why were they messing with you? Come on,
it's a great recommendation.
It is a great recommendation. You got to check it all out when you're here.
That's right.
All right. You guys can do that together sometime.
Listen, next time you go abroad, we'll tell Super Bowl stories together, and we can go to the bunkers. You know what I mean?
Deal. Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you, Kurt.
You got it, guys. Talk to you next week.
All right. Safe travels back.
Yeah. So he definitely made time to watch and saw you and said what he saw, which was not good.
A lot of specifics there.
There really were.
Yeah. I was impressed. Like, if I was in London for 72 hours on the company dime and I was there to call Ravens Titans, I'm not positive that I would have popped in Mr. What was the play-by-play guy's name?
Brandon Gowden
and Robert Smith to lock in on that game, but he clearly did.
Kurt did. You know why? He's got the work ethic of a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's a pro.
Yeah. So, that's how you make a couple Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And live to tell stories
Which one?